was a teen, I stopped into a local Blockbuster Video.
What a difference!
And rented a bunch of anime on VHS. Yeah, I know, I'm dating myself. But if I don't, who will? I rented a few anime tapes, and while I argued over N64 games on a dial-up modem, I watched these features. One was a pretty slow-moving movie that I mostly watched for the visuals, but really grew to enjoy the ending, which really stayed with me. I rewinded and rewatched it and paid closer attention, and soon I resolved to buy this movie once I had a bit more money. And so I did. And it's a VHS tape I still have and must have watched dozens of times, and even have the expensive DVD Blu-ray combo set put out years later. The film was Wings of the Honneamise Royal Space Force, and it's my favorite anime movie. Maybe my favorite movie, period. On an alternate Earth, space travel remains but a fevered dream, and the project of a small group of people within the country of Honneamise. There, a shiftless, disenchanted member of the Royal Space Force, Shiro Ladat, dreams of better things, of flying, when he's little more than a misfit in a gang of losers. The Space Force is a joke, and even though they're getting closer to viable spaceflight, nobody wants to volunteer for it with the risks inherent. They'd rather spend their time goofing off and partying, Shiro included. But then suddenly Shiro meets somebody who changes his life. A demure religious woman named Riquini, who lives with her, sister, daughter, Blackjack's backup child bride. Anyway, she lives with this kid and has no visible source of income. Partially wanting to impress her, Shiro volunteers to be the first man in space and has to endure the endlessly rigorous training and preparation for such a momentous undertaking. One of my favorite scenes in this movie is when Shiro receives his first gravity training, going up with a pilot in a plane. It is a sumptuous eye feast. Even in crappy VHS quality, the gorgeousness shines through. Then there's this brawl that follows it. Our lovable losers meet the Spaceflight Society, a group of elderly technicians and engineers that have been working on rockets for decades. While there is some clashing of the generations, work goes underway to build humanity's first spacecraft. Meanwhile, Shiro tries wooing Riquini, but the devout woman wants for more than just his lustful desires. Even so, Shiro clearly cares about her, a concern that isn't entirely of a sexual nature. However, once a sabotaging incident costs the life of the head rocket expert, it becomes clear that the public may not support this project. Even more disturbing is that the politicians are merely using the Space Force and the rocket launch as a chess piece, hoping to intentionally provoke an act of war from a neighboring nation.
It's crazy! They're sending us to a war zone to launch the world's biggest firecracker. Did anyone try to stop them? Did you? Did you?
It's not our decision. It's Ministry's.
What's that? Ministry? Defense Ministry?
Diabolical. Oh, and if you didn't notice, the guy playing the character Mati? No. The character you just saw ranting at the old men. I mean, the guy playing him is none other than Walter White himself, Bryan Cranston. I called in Bryan Cranston for an interview about this role, and seeing as how it's my birthday, he flew in to speak about it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bryan Cranston. Does he just not do anime review shows? Gradually, Shiro becomes discouraged by the social backlash and pressures of being in the spotlight. Disenchanted with the entire project, he goes AWOL, taking up residence with Riquini and Mana, a simpler, uncomplicated existence. But it just makes him all the more desperate to fulfill his needs, and one night, unexpectedly, he forces himself onto his host. I knew that once I chose this film to review for this episode, that I'd have to deal with this scene and its social implications. It's not something I feel comfortable doing. I'm not a serious enough person to properly address the subject of sexual assault. I can only imagine what a horrible violation it must be. And here we are, with a main protagonist that, until this point, while not perfect, was well worth rooting for to succeed. What are we supposed to do with this as viewers? Sure, Shiro never goes any further. He's even punished for it. Thematically it works because the viewer feels betrayed and unclean by Shiro's actions, and so the spiritual cleansing Rikuni hopes for in humanity seems all the more necessary. But does this scene really need to be here? How are we supposed to continue cheering this man on? Now he's a creep. And yeah, a scene or two later he's running for his life from an assassin. He's nearly killed. I guess the viewer is intended to receive some kind of catharsis, seeing Shiro suffer for his bad behavior. This is just something that happens. The assault is actually apologized for by the victim.
I can't even believe I did that. You are such a good person. I didn't hurt you, did I? Shiro, you have to accept my apology. You will, won't you?
Huh? No, it was me.
No, Shiro, you have to find it in your heart to forgive me, or otherwise I'll never be able to forgive myself. I have to go.
I think the only mitigating factor is that Shiro and Rikuni don't pair up. There will be no Shiro-Rikuni romance. To do that after what happened would be despicable. The problem is, he doesn't really have a what have I become moment. And when I say mitigating, I don't mean to excuse the behavior, it's terrible. I'm just saying Shiro isn't irredeemable. I want to talk briefly about Rikuni's faith, because I think it's an important aspect of both the character and the movie itself. Her religion is some kind of mix of Greek mythology and Japanese folklore, but seems to be evangelized in a very Western Christian fashion. Essentially, all men are wicked, corrupted by the Prometheus-like figure stealing fire from a higher power, and damned to murder forevermore. It's kind of a bummer. There doesn't seem to be any hope for salvation in the scripture Rikuni clings to, and yet she also clings to a hope that there might be, somewhere, a place for human beings to be cleansed, perhaps in the stars. This is why she's so enthralled when Shiro reveals what he does for a living.
That's so beautiful! An untouched place among the stars? To be completely free of all the troubles that are plaguing our world.
I guess our force is unique.
I think this must be the greatest day of my life.
Shiro barely survives the attempt on his life, but, while shaken, begins to actually embrace his position. When the expected fighting over the rocket takes place and the military tries shutting down the launch, it's Shiro that rallies the Space Force. For all his faults, even after the terrible thing he did, or maybe because of it, Shiro will not abandon his mission.
I'll still do it, even if it means I die in the process. Here's your chance to be in the history books instead of just reading them. There may never be another chance like this again. Anyone who isn't with me can leave. I will do this!
It's pretty clear where this story goes from here. I don't want to show too many of the visuals, but it's pretty stunning. And hardly a day goes by when I don't close my eyes and imagine the song of humanity it sings, of both the good and bad, and the longing therein. The ending alone is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen animated in my now 31 years of life. It's amazing. I know that scene is a bit of a stain on an otherwise gorgeous, breathtaking film, but maybe that's the point the filmmakers were trying to make. That an ugly, nasty, violent humanity is in need of a good spiritual awakening, and nothing buoys the spirit quite like reaching a new plateau, a new frontier. There's no guarantee. The film doesn't ensure that this will indeed be the answer. Even Shiro isn't entirely convinced that humanity will change should they take to the stars. But his is a personal growth, and he knew he had to do this, at least for himself, and he leaves the possibility open for others. Please, watch this movie. Even if you have to squirm your way through that uncomfortable scene, watch it. This is a movie that deserves to be viewed more than anything else I've reviewed thus far. This is paramount. This movie is a masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. It's why I scrapped any other plans I had for this week's episode to do this movie. Because it's my birthday, I wanted to give both myself and the viewer a gift. The gift of Wings of the Honneamise Royal Space Force. Even if you can't pronounce it, watch it. Next time on Otaku Evolution, I don't know. I guess I haven't hit the Gundam franchise yet. Yeah, something Gundam. See you then! Hamana.